Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one. Much later video than you were probably expecting today because I had to wait for the embargo to end before I could show you this. The Alters from 11-Bit Studios, the developers of, amongst other things, Frostpunk. This is a game that I first heard about well over a year ago, and it's been on my Steam wishlist ever since. Quite some time ago they released a demo where you could play the prologue. It was completely free. I gobbled it up, and I've been eagerly awaiting the finished game ever since playing it. Well, it now has a release date, the 12th of June. We'll be able to get our hands on the finished version of the game in slightly less than a month. Before that, however, as you can see in today's video, I did manage to get my hands on a pre-release version of the game, but only for 24 hours. The developers did ask that I don't play any further than the end of Act 1, and certainly don't talk about anything that happens in Act 2 and anything after that. They needn't have worried, I didn't even get to the end of Act 1, despite plugging away at it for an entire day. And I don't think it was entirely due just to me being crap, because there is plenty to see and do, even just in the prologue in the first act. I'm going to be mostly skipping through the prologue, however, because, as I said, they did release a demo of this game, a free demo on Steam, quite some time ago, and that's essentially the prologue. However, for the benefit of anybody who didn't see that video or who didn't play the demo themselves, here's the story. The character you play goes by the name of Jan Dolsky. You're a general labourer on board a mining expedition to this remote and extremely inhospitable planet. That ocean is actually oil. The atmosphere is 100% unbreathable, and the whole place is ravaged by magnetic and radioactive storms. You are also the only survivor of your expedition, which is a little suspicious because everybody else's drop pods landed intact. It's just everybody else died inside them. The only shred of good news is that the expedition does have a pre-assembled mobile base. Bad news, it's not designed to be run by one person. The extremely bad news is the reason that the expedition has a mobile base is because nothing on this planet can survive sunrise. This is a triple star system. There's a bit of the old three-body problem thing going on here, and the reason why there's no life on this planet is that at sunrise, everything basically gets cooked and scoured down to the bedrock. So you have to stay ahead of the sun, which would be difficult enough to do alone, even if you had the skills and the knowledge to manage the base's systems. But you don't. You were actually the least skilled member of the crew. You were just the general labourer. You're the guy who moved the boxes around from one place to the other. Anybody with any real practical skills died in the landing. The idea was that the crew as a whole would mine the resources required to maintain, expand, and move the base and stay ahead of the sunrise. But all by yourself and without the necessary skills, that's going to prove to be next to impossible. Communication with Earth is sketchy at best, leaving you with very little hope that any kind of rescue expedition is going to be sent. You are pretty much on your own. Until, shortly after arrival on day 2, while you're out scavenging the resources and materials that you require to not die immediately, you make a startling discovery. Things start getting a little weird while you're out looking through the caves. You've just stumbled across the most exotic element in the galaxy. It's called rapidium.
What the hell?
And it's the entire reason why your expedition was sent to this planet in the first place. This stuff is so rare and exotic that most people back on Earth aren't even aware that it exists. But it has certain properties that could be the solution to all of Earth's problems. If, of course, you can get it back to Earth. This chance discovery of rapidium is the solution to all of your problems, because having discovered the most exotic and valuable resource in the entire galaxy, suddenly the company is very keen to ensure that you make it back to Earth. Or at the very least, very keen to ensure that the rapidium does. First, they want to make sure you've got the real thing though, so they propose an experiment, just to make sure that what you have is actually rapidium. The reason it's called rapidium, by the way, is that one of the properties of this element, and for reasons that nobody can really explain, is that it has the ability to massively accelerate growth. So we can test the substance that we have in the base's genetics womb by growing a sheep. And if we manage to create an adult sheep in the space of a day, we've got rapidium. And somebody back on Earth might be persuaded to actually give a shit about getting us out of here. Unfortunately, even now with Earth motivated to come to our assistance with sunrise in 6 days, ain't no rescue ship getting here in time. So I'm going to have to get this base up and moving. And I still don't have the skills or knowledge to get that done by myself. But while Earth can't send any physical assistance in time to get here before the sunrise kills me, they are very happy to make a suggestion. And it involves using the quantum computer, the genetics womb, and the rapidium that I have just discovered. I don't have the skills necessary to fix the base and get it moving before the sun comes up and kills me. But it's possible, depending on decisions that I made throughout the course of my life, that there could have been a version of me who did have the technical skills necessary. If I can just isolate the point in my life where a decision was made that sent a different version of me down an alternate branch where I did acquire the necessary technical skills to fix the base and get it running. And then grow that version of me in the genetics womb using the rapidium. This is all highly illegal, by the way. But needs must when the devil drives. At its heart, the Alters is a sort of base building, management, exploration, survival game. But what makes it different is that the base management side doesn't just involve managing the base's mechanical and technical systems. You also have to manage the crew. And that's been done before in other games, but never like this, because the crew are all different versions of you. They're technically the same person, but they're versions of you that have been moulded by different circumstances due to the different life paths that they've all taken. And the thing that you have to bear in mind, the very, very important thing that you have to bear in mind about these alternate versions of yourself, is that you have created each and every one of them for purely selfish reasons. All of these different yous only exist so that you can survive. You have effectively created different versions of yourself, brought them into existence, and given them a very simple choice. To put it another way, imagine how you would react if you suddenly woke up one day on a remote base on an alien planet with a different version of yourself standing in front of you saying, "Hi, I need your help or we're both going to die in 6 days. I have basically created you to help me or die." I mean, that's your choice. Think about the psychological implications, and also consider the very likely possibility that this new version of you that you've just created is not going to like you very much.
You bastard.
So even if some of these versions of you do have enough of a sense of self-preservation to do what is required immediately, so that you don't both die in the next couple of days, any reasonable person created under these circumstances is completely understandably going to be carrying a buttload of resentment about it. And you're going to be the target of that resentment, because you have just created them to help you out of a life or death situation by putting them into that life or death situation.
Ready?
So as well as the exploration, the survival, the base building, the base management, the crew management is a critical part of the game. You're not just hiring an engineer, a technician, or a scientist. You're hiring an engineer, a technician, or a scientist who comes with a metric ass ton of emotional baggage, completely understandable emotional baggage, and you've got to come up with a way of dealing with that and managing the psychology of the other members of the crew that you create. The one advantage that you have here is that you know exactly who these other members of the crew are, because they're you. At least up until the point where you made the decision that caused your lives to head in different directions, you all share the same experiences. So there is the potential for you to find some kind of common ground there for yourself and your alters to bond over and resolve your differences. It's just finding that common ground. And with you and the first alter that you create, Jan the technician, that common ground was your mother. Because Jan the technician stayed at home and took on a low-paying technical job in order to help his mother stand up against your abusive and alcoholic father. And you never did. You instead went away to college. So Jan the technician learnt useful practical skills and also learnt assertiveness. You didn't. But the thing that you could bond over was your love of your mother, in particular her cooking. Because your life paths diverged quite early on, there's a limited amount of things that you did actually have in common between the two of you, even though you are technically the same person, but your love of your mother's pierogi was one of them. So you're able to use this shared experience to find some common ground between yourself and technician Jan and resolve the immediate conflict between the two of you and start to build some kind of long-term relationship. Well, as long-term as it can be, when you're always just a couple of days away from the sun coming up and killing you both, or running out of food and starving to death, or getting caught out on the surface at night too late and too far away from the base when a radiation storm closes in, or any number of different ways that you can die on this absolute shithole of a planet. I'll say this for Technician Jan. He is a bit of an arsehole, although that's probably understandable given the circumstances he suddenly found himself in, but he definitely has an extremely practical head on his shoulders, and has come to terms with the reality of the situation that you're both in a lot faster than you have.
All I know is we need to get to a safe place, then we'll improvise. Well, there's one thing you should know. This base is a resource-consuming, maintenance-heavy sucker to operate. I have you to help me. That's not gonna be enough. I'll be blunt with you. If you want to survive, you're gonna need more people. People? What people? The rapidium's there. Use it. Make more versions of me. Versions of us both, you mean? Huh. That almost sounded like we're planning kids. You need to work on your cooking skills, though. I was hoping I could avoid going through all that again. It was quite a struggle with you. Struggle? One day you'll look back and realize I was the easy one. Mark my words.
So, you need to ensure that you have a steady incoming supply of organics so that you don't both starve to death. And of course, the amount of organics that you're going to need is going to steadily rise every time you create a new version of yourself to solve whichever new problem needs fixing that the two of you who currently exist can't fix. As well as organics, every time the base stops, you're going to need to go out and mine the metals that are going to be required not just to keep the base moving and stay ahead of the sunrise, but also to maintain the existing facilities on board the base, as well as research and build new facilities to deal with any further problems that arise further on down the road, all of which require daily maintenance, not least of which are the base's radiation shields, which must be maintained on a daily basis, and therefore require a steady supply of incoming resources, otherwise everybody on board the base dies a slow, lingering death of radiation poisoning. On top of all this, you not only have to manage the psychology of your crew, but you also have to put up with Earth's increasingly desperate and transparent attempts to convince you that they actually give a shit about you, and not just all the rapidium that you're harvesting for them, including, but not limited to, doing things like digging up your ex-wife, because they think talking to her is going to make you feel better. Even though it's pathetically clear, since the two of you haven't spoken in years since your divorce, and she's got a high-paying job in the same company that you work for, that sent you out here to find rapidium in the first place. And now when you've found rapidium, suddenly she's interested in how you're feeling. And she wants to talk because the company are concerned about your state of mind. I mean, it's all kind of pathetic, but it's just another thing that you have to deal with. On top of the daily struggle for survival, getting along with every new crew member that you are forced to create in order to deal with whatever problem has arisen on that particular day, keeping everybody here alive and not at each other's throats, which is going to be considerably easier said than done. You also have to deal with everybody back at Earth, as it becomes increasingly obvious that while I'm sure they would all love to have the base arrive at the extraction point ahead of the sunrise with as much rapidium on board as possible, whether or not you or any of your new crewmates make it there alive is, well, let's just say it would be a bonus, but it's not exactly at the top of the priority list of anybody back on Earth. In fact, since you've had to resort to some highly illegal experimentation in order to create the crew that you're going to need to get the base to the extraction point before the sun comes up, and you did it at the suggestion of the company, it might in fact be better for the company to ensure that none of you make it alive to the extraction point, because, well, dead men tell no tales. Every day brings new problems and new challenges, and they're all going to have to be dealt with if you and any of the yous that you end up creating along the way are going to make it back to Earth alive. Speaking of problems...
Hey, were we supposed to stop here? Nope. It's way too early. Don't tell me something's wrong with the base again. Not on my watch. Systems are working fine. Something outside then? Yeah. Don't jump into your suit already. I'm kinda starting to like the inside of our base. Alright, I'll take a look around.
Yeah, there's a problem outside, all right. And it's a big one. And I don't think it's a problem that neither I or Technician Jan are going to be able to fix. Stick around for the next video and find out what it is. In the meantime, hope you enjoyed this, and if you like the look of this game, you can wishlist it on Steam. It comes out on the 16th of June. Hope you enjoyed the video and the game, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.